The rain fell harder than it had any right to, and Clara Hastings stood beneath a black umbrella watching them lower someone she'd once loved into the ground. Not romantically. Sarah had been her best friend through college, through late nights and bad boyfriends, and the worst heartbreak of Clara's life. Now Sarah was gone, 29 years old, found dead in her apartment with no marks, no explanation, just the sudden absence of a heartbeat. The coroner had shrugged and written "heart failure" on the certificate, as if that explained anything. Clara's fingers tightened on the umbrella handle. Across the grave, through the sheets of autumn rain, stood a figure she hadn't seen in 5 years. White hair plastered to his skull, skin so pale it seemed to glow against the darkness of his coat. He wasn't holding an umbrella. The rain didn't seem to touch him. Vorian Gravesend, the vampire king of the Eastern Territories, the man who had walked out of her life without warning and left her to pick up the pieces. Their eyes met across Sarah's casket, and Clara felt the old wound tear open fresh. The priest finished his words. People began to drift away, hunched against the weather, murmuring condolences that meant nothing. Clara stood frozen, watching Vorian watch her. He didn't move as the crowd thinned, neither did she. Finally, they were alone except for the gravediggers waiting at a respectful distance. Vorian walked around the grave toward her with that fluid grace she remembered too well. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the rain beating on his black coat, the way his silver eyes hadn't changed at all while she'd aged 5 years. "Clara," he said. His voice was exactly as she remembered, low, careful, with the faint accent of someone who'd learned English centuries ago. "You have no right to be here," she said. "Sarah was my friend too. Sarah was your snack. Don't pretend otherwise." The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Something flickered in his expression. "I never fed from Sarah. I told you I don't feed from friends." "You told me a lot of things." Clara adjusted her grip on the umbrella. "Most of them turned out to be lies. I never lied to you. You left. That's not the same as lying. It's worse." She turned to go, and his hand caught her wrist. Not hard. He'd never been rough with her. But the touch sent electricity up her arm, and she hated herself for still feeling it. "Please," Vorian said. "I need to speak with you about Sarah's death." Clara pulled her wrist free. "The coroner said it was natural causes." "The coroner is human. He doesn't know what to look for." Vorian glanced at the gravediggers, then back to her. "This isn't the place. Will you meet me? 1 hour. The coffee shop on 6th Street where we used to go." "I don't owe you anything." "I know." He stepped back, and the rain finally seemed to touch him, running in rivulets down his white hair. "But Sarah deserves the truth, and I think you want it too." Clara wanted to say no, wanted to walk away and leave him standing in the rain like he'd left her standing in her apartment 5 years ago, his note on the kitchen counter saying only, "I'm sorry. This is the only way to keep you safe." But Sarah was dead, and if there was even a chance that it wasn't natural. 1 hour, Clara said. "And then you leave me alone forever." Vorian's expression didn't change, but she saw something shift behind his eyes. 1 hour, he agreed. Clara drove to the coffee shop with her hands shaking on the wheel. She told herself it was anger, told herself she was doing this for Sarah, not because some pathetic part of her had been waiting 5 years to see him again. The cafe was exactly as she remembered, small, warm, smelling of espresso and old books. They'd spent dozens of evenings here when they were together, when she'd been a grad student working on her thesis about Gothic literature, and he'd been her unexpected research subject, who'd turned into so much more. Vorian was already there, sitting at their old table in the back corner. He'd changed clothes. Now he wore black trousers and a white shirt that made his pallor look deliberate, regal. His hair had dried into the same shock of white silk she used to run her fingers through. Clara ordered a coffee she didn't want and sat down across from him. "Talk," she said. Vorian folded his hands on the table. "Sarah was killed by a vampire named Constantine. He's been hunting people I care about for the last 200 years. The bluntness of it stole her breath." "What?" "There's a curse, an old one. Constantine and I were friends once, before he was turned against his will by a vampire he later killed. That vampire cursed him with his dying breath. Constantine can only feel pleasure when he's causing me pain. He's tried to kill me directly dozens of times and failed, so instead, he kills the people I love." Vorian's voice remained steady, but his knuckles were white. "That's why I left you. He'd found out about us. He sent me a message with a lock of your hair and the address of your office. I knew if I stayed, he'd kill you to hurt me." Clara sat back in her chair. Her coffee was burning her hand through the cup, but she couldn't seem to put it down. "You're telling me you left to protect me?" "Yes." "And you never thought to tell me this? To let me make my own choice?" "He's killed everyone I've told. He has spies everywhere. The moment I warned them, they became targets. The only way to save them was to cut them out of my life completely." Vorian's eyes met hers. "I've lost 12 people I loved to him over 2 centuries. I wasn't willing to lose you too. So you lost me anyway." Clara set down the coffee before she spilled it. "And now Sarah's dead. What changed? Constantine is dead, or he was supposed to be." Vorian leaned forward. 6 months ago, I finally tracked him to his stronghold in Prague. I fought him, and I won. I put a stake through his heart and watched him turn to ash. I waited another 5 months to be certain, and then I started trying to find you again." "Started trying?" "You disappeared, changed your number, moved apartments, deleted your social media. I thought perhaps you'd gotten married, changed your name." His voice roughened slightly. "I thought perhaps you'd moved on. I did move on. It was mostly true. But not because I wanted to, because you didn't give me a choice. I know, and I'm sorry. More than you can possibly understand." Vorian pulled something from his pocket and laid it on the table. A photograph, bent and faded. Sarah, Clara, and Vorian at a summer barbecue 3 months before he'd left. "When I heard about Sarah's death, I knew. Constantine isn't dead. Somehow he survived and he's starting again." Clara picked up the photograph with trembling fingers. She remembered that day. Sarah had been laughing at something Vorian said, and Clara had been so happy she could barely breathe. She'd thought she'd found forever. "Why Sarah?" she whispered. "To draw me out, to let me know he's still playing the game." Vorian's jaw tightened. "And to hurt me. He knows I cared about her." "Did you tell the police?" "The police can't stop a 500-year-old vampire, Clara. They'd die trying, and Constantine would vanish before they could blink." "So what are you going to do?" "Find him. Kill him, properly this time." Vorian reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. "But first, I need to make sure you're safe. He knows I came to the funeral. He'll know I've made contact with you. You're in danger now. Because of you." "Yes." At least he didn't try to deny it. Clara pulled her hand back, wrapped both arms around herself. "What do you want from me? Come with me. Leave this city, leave this life behind for a while. Let me protect you until Constantine is truly dead." "You mean run away?" "I mean survive." Clara laughed, and it came out broken. "You're unbelievable. You know that. You walk back into my life after 5 years, tell me my best friend was murdered by your ancient enemy, and ask me to just drop everything and run away with you? I know how it sounds. Do you? Do you have any idea what the last 5 years have been like for me?" Clara stood up, and several people glanced over at the movement. She lowered her voice. "I spent 6 months thinking I'd done something wrong. Another 6 convincing myself you were dead. Then I found out from Marcus that you'd been seen in Berlin, and I realized you'd just left. No explanation, no goodbye. Just gone." Vorian stood too. "I couldn't say goodbye. If I'd seen you again, I would have stayed, and then you would have died. That should have been my choice to make." "You're right." His voice cut through her anger, quiet and firm. "You're absolutely right. I took your choice from you because I was afraid, and I've regretted it every day since. But I can't change the past, Clara. I can only try to keep you alive now. Maybe I don't want your protection. Maybe I want you to leave me alone. I will. After Constantine is dead, I'll disappear again if that's what you want. But please, let me keep you safe first." Clara grabbed her purse. "I need to think." "Clara!" "I said I need to think." She headed for the door, and this time he didn't follow. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark. Clara sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands on the wheel, tears running down her face. She'd told herself she was over him. She'd dated other men, built a career as a literary agent, made a life that didn't have a vampire-shaped hole in it. But seeing him again had brought everything back. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. The way he'd held her so carefully, always aware of his strength. The way he'd listened when she talked about books for hours, his ancient eyes lighting up with genuine interest. The way he'd broken her heart without even giving her a chance to fight for them. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I'm staying at the Grandmont Hotel, room 412. Whatever you decide, please be careful. He's watching. V." Clara stared at the message. Then she drove home to her apartment, locked every door and window, and tried to sleep. She dreamed of Sarah, of finding her friend's body, pale and still, eyes open and staring at nothing. In the dream, Sarah turned her head and whispered, "He's coming for you too." Clara woke up at 3 a.m, heart pounding. She got up, made tea she didn't drink, and opened her laptop. If Vorian was telling the truth, there would be evidence. She started searching. By dawn, she'd found 12 obituaries over the last 200 years. Deaths that had happened in cities where Vorian had been known to live, people who'd been close to him. All of them had died of mysterious causes: heart failure, sudden illness, accidents that made no sense. Clara sat back, feeling sick. It was all true. She picked up her phone and texted the unknown number. "I'm coming, but we need to talk. Really talk." The response came immediately. "Thank you, I'll be here." Clara packed a bag, called her assistant to say she'd be taking a few weeks of emergency leave, and drove to the Grandmont Hotel as the sun came up. Vorian answered the door 3 seconds after she knocked. He was still wearing the white shirt from last night, though he'd rolled up the sleeves. His silver eyes searched her face. "You found the others," he said. "I found enough." Clara walked past him into the suite. It was elegant, expensive, the curtains drawn tight against the morning sun. Oh, 12 people, Vorian. 12 people you cared about, dead. 14, actually. 2 of them were before records were kept well. He closed the door. "I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry they had to die." Clara turned to face him. "I have conditions. If I'm going to do this, we do it my way. I'm listening. First, no more disappearing to protect me. If something's wrong, you tell me. You let me make my own choices." Vorian hesitated, then nodded. "Agreed. Second, full truth. About Constantine, about your past, about everything. No more secrets." "Agreed. Third, when this is over, we talk. About what happened. About whether there's anything left between us, or if we're just running from a monster together." Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe, or pain. "Agreed." Clara dropped her bag on the floor. "Okay, so where do we start?" "We start by leaving the city. I have a safe house upstate, warded against vampires who aren't keyed to the protections. We'll be secure there while I hunt for Constantine's trail. You can't just magic him into appearing. If I could, I would have killed him a century ago. Constantine is old, cunning, and very good at hiding." Vorian moved to the window, careful to stay out of the thin line of sunlight leaking through the curtains. "But he's also arrogant. He'll make a move soon, try to hurt me again. When he does, I'll be ready. And me? What am I supposed to do while you're hunting?" "Stay alive. Stay safe." He glanced back at her. "Stay with me." There was something in his voice that made her throat tight. Clara looked away. "When do we leave?" "As soon as the sun sets. I can't travel during the day." "Right. Vampire." She'd almost forgotten. When they'd been together, he'd made it all seem so normal. The fact that he never ate, that he disappeared before dawn, that his skin was always cool to the touch. She'd loved him anyway. Maybe she'd never stopped. "There's a bedroom through there if you want to rest," Vorian said. "You look tired." "I am tired. I've been up all night researching dead people." But she took his advice, because suddenly she was exhausted. The bedroom was dark and quiet. Clara lay down on top of the covers and closed her eyes, and when she woke up it was late afternoon. Someone had put a blanket over her. She found Vorian in the main room, reading a book that looked about 300 years old. He glanced up when she emerged. "Better?" he asked. "A little." Clara sat down across from him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you left, did you ever think about coming back? Even once?" Vorian closed the book carefully. Every day, every hour. But I couldn't risk it. The moment I made contact, Constantine would know, and you'd be in danger again. So you just suffered alone. I've had a lot of practice at suffering. He said it without self-pity, just stating a fact. I'm over 700 years old, Clara. I've lost more people than I can count. I've learned to carry grief. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Perhaps, but it kept you alive. Clara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Tell me about Constantine. How did this all start? Vorian was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. Constantine was a prince in what's now Romania. This was in 1523. I was already old then, 300 years into my immortality, and I was traveling through his lands. He found me feeding from one of his guards and confronted me with a sword. What happened? I disarmed him in about 10 seconds, but I was impressed by his courage. Most humans ran from vampires. He attacked. We became friends. Vorian's eyes grew distant. He was brilliant, funny. He loved poetry and warfare in equal measure. He begged me to turn him, and I refused. I'd seen what immortality did to people, and I didn't want that for him. But someone else turned him. A vampire named Dragan. He was old, cruel, and he turned Constantine against his will out of spite because he knew I cared about the boy. Constantine woke up as a vampire in Dragan's dungeon, and the first thing Dragan did was force him to kill his own sister. Clara put her hand over her mouth. Constantine went mad. He broke free, hunted Dragan down, and staked him. But with his dying breath, Dragan cursed him. He bound Constantine's capacity for joy to my suffering. Every moment of happiness Constantine feels must come from my pain. It's blood magic, old and vicious. I've tried to break it for 2 centuries. Nothing works. So he's a victim too. He was, at first. I tried to help him, tried to find a cure. But over time, the curse changed him. Or maybe it just revealed what he truly was underneath. Now he hunts the people I love because it's the only thing that makes him feel alive. Vorian's voice hardened. He stopped being a victim the moment he chose to keep killing. And you can't break the curse. I've consulted every witch, every elder, every magical creature I could find. The curse dies with one of us, either Constantine or me. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. So you have to kill him? Yes. And if you can't? Vorian looked at her directly. Then I'll die trying. And the curse dies with me, and Constantine becomes mortal again, and he can finally find peace. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's a contingency. He stood up, came over to where she was sitting. But I don't plan to die, Clara. I plan to win and keep you safe, and give us a chance to have the conversation we never got to finish 5 years ago. She looked up at him, this ancient, powerful creature who'd broken her heart to save her life. What if there's nothing left to talk about? Then I'll accept that. But I hope there is. He offered his hand. The sun's nearly down. We should go. Clara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. His skin was cool, his grip gentle. It felt like coming home. They drove north in a black car Vorian had rented, leaving the city behind as the last light faded from the sky. Clara watched the landscape turn rural, houses giving way to forest. How far is this safe house? She asked. Another hour. It's isolated, that's the point. And it's really warded? Constantine can't get in? Not without an invitation. The wards are keyed to my bloodline and anyone I've explicitly granted access to. I'll add you when we arrive. Clara leaned her head against the window. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest problem was a difficult author who wouldn't accept edits. Now I'm running from a cursed vampire with my ex-boyfriend, who's also a vampire king. Technically, I'm not your ex-boyfriend. We never officially broke up. She turned to stare at him. You left me a note and disappeared for 5 years. I know, I'm just saying, technically, Vorian. Sorry. But there was the faintest hint of a smile on his lips, and Clara felt something crack in her chest. Don't do that, she said. Do what? Be charming. I'm trying to stay mad at you. The smile faded. You have every right to be angry. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What are you asking for? He was quiet for a mile. Then, a chance. To prove I've learned. To show you that I trust you enough to let you stand beside me instead of hiding you away. You're literally hiding me away right now. I'm protecting you while I eliminate the threat. That's different from pushing you away and refusing to explain why. Clara couldn't argue with that. And after? When Constantine's dead? After, I'll ask you the question I should have asked 5 years ago. Which is? Vorian's hands tightened on the wheel. Would you consider spending your life with me? However much of it you want to share, as a human or otherwise. On your terms, not mine. Clara's breath caught. You're offering to turn me. I'm offering you a choice, the choice I never gave you before. He glanced at her. But let's survive the next few weeks first. They drove in silence after that. Clara's mind was spinning. She'd thought about it before when they were together, what it would mean to become a vampire. To leave behind her humanity, her mortality, everything she knew, to live forever with him. She'd been terrified and tempted in equal measure. Now, 5 years later, with grief and anger and stubborn hope tangled in her chest, she didn't know what she wanted, except that she wanted to survive. And she wanted answers. The safe house appeared around a curve in the road. It was a stone cottage, small and neat, surrounded by forest. Lights glowed in the windows. It looks cozy, Clara said. It's functional. I've had it for about 50 years. No one knows about it except me and a few trusted people. Vorian parked the car and got out. Clara followed him to the front door. He pressed his palm against the wood, and she felt something shimmer in the air. Magic. Come in, Vorian said, and the door opened. Inside was exactly what she'd expected. Old furniture, shelves of books, a fireplace ready to light. It smelled like dust and old paper, and faintly of Vorian himself, that scent of rain and stone she'd never been able to name. There are 2 bedrooms upstairs, Vorian said. Take whichever you prefer. There's food in the kitchen, though it's not fresh. I can go into town tomorrow night and get supplies. You thought of everything. I've had centuries of practice. He set down her bag. You should rest. It's been a difficult day. Clara nodded, but she didn't move toward the stairs. Vorian, thank you for telling me the truth this time. He turned to look at her, and the expression on his face was raw. I should have told you 5 years ago. I should have trusted you to be strong enough to handle it. Yes, you should have. Clara crossed the space between them. But you're telling me now. That counts for something. She went upstairs before she could do something stupid like touch him. The bedroom she chose was small, with a window overlooking the forest, and a bed that was surprisingly comfortable. Clara unpacked her meager belongings and lay down, staring at the ceiling. She could hear Vorian moving around downstairs. The rustle of pages, the creak of old wood, familiar sounds from a life she'd thought was over. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about what came next. The next 3 days fell into a strange routine. Clara woke late, made breakfast while Vorian slept somewhere in the house where the sun couldn't reach, and spent the daylight hours reading or walking in the forest. When night fell, Vorian emerged and they talked. They talked about everything. His past, her past 5 years, the world and how it had changed. He told her about the vampire courts, the politics and power struggles she'd never known about when they were together. She told him about Sarah's last months, how her friend had seemed happy, how there'd been no warning. She never knew what was coming, Clara said on the 3rd night. They were sitting by the fire, rain pattering against the windows. She just went to sleep and didn't wake up. That's Constantine's preferred method, quick, clean, hard to trace. Vorian stared into the flames. He would have used magic. Stopped her heart from a distance. She wouldn't have felt pain. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, nothing makes this better. But she didn't suffer. That's worth something. Clara pulled her knees to her chest. Have you found any trace of him yet? No, he's still hiding. Vorian had been going out every night, searching for signs, calling in favors from other vampires. So far, nothing. But he'll surface. He can't resist the game. And when he does, I'll be ready. Clara looked at him across the firelight. He was wearing dark trousers and a black shirt, his white hair pulled back. He looked like something out of a Gothic painting, beautiful and dangerous and impossible. Do you ever get tired of it? She asked. Of what? Being a vampire, living forever, fighting the same battles over and over? Vorian was quiet. Then, sometimes. There are decades where I'm so tired of existence that I consider walking into the sun. But then I meet someone who reminds me why life is worth living, and I keep going. Someone like me. Exactly like you. He turned to meet her eyes. You made me feel human again, Clara. You made me remember what it was like to hope for the future instead of just enduring it. And then you left. And then I left. And I spent 5 years feeling like I'd lost the best thing that ever happened to me. His voice was rough. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm just telling you the truth. Clara stood up. I'm going to bed. Clara. I need to think, Vorian. About all of this. About us. She went upstairs and lay in the dark, listening to the rain, and tried to figure out what she wanted. The truth was, she'd never stopped loving him. Even when she'd hated him, even when she'd told herself she'd moved on, some part of her had been waiting for him to come back. Now he was here, offering her everything she'd wanted 5 years ago, a future, a choice, a chance. But could she trust him not to leave again? Clara fell asleep without an answer. She woke to the sound of breaking glass. Clara shot upright, heart pounding. Downstairs, she heard Vorian shout something in a language she didn't recognize. Then, a crash. She grabbed her phone and ran for the door. The hallway was dark, but there was light coming from downstairs, flickering, orange, fire. "Vorian!" she screamed. "Stay there!" His voice was sharp with command. "Don't come down!" Clara ignored him and ran down the stairs. The front room was in chaos, the window had shattered inward, and flames were licking up the curtains. In the center of the room, Vorian was fighting another vampire. He was tall, this stranger, with dark hair and eyes like chips of ice. He moved like lightning, faster than Clara could follow, and Vorian was bleeding from a gash across his chest. "Ah, there she is," the dark-haired vampire said in accented English. He turned to look at Clara, and she felt cold wash over her. "Hello, little human. I'm Constantine. Vorian has told you about me, yes?" "Get away from him," Clara said. Her voice shook. "Or what? You'll call the police?" Constantine laughed. "I've been waiting centuries for this moment. Vorian actually cares about someone again. Someone fragile, breakable, easy to kill." Vorian moved between them, blood staining his white shirt crimson. "You won't touch her." "I already touched her friend, sweet Sarah. She died so peacefully." Constantine circled them, smiling. "And now I'll touch Clara, and you'll watch. And you'll feel the same despair you felt 13 times before. You're not getting near her. You can't stop me. You couldn't stop me before, and you can't stop me now." Constantine lunged, and Vorian met him. They moved too fast for Clara to see clearly. A blur of white and dark, the sound of flesh hitting flesh, snarls that didn't sound human. She stumbled backward, looking for something, anything she could use as a weapon. Her hand closed on a poker from the fireplace. Vorian slammed Constantine into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster, but Constantine twisted, fast as a snake, and drove his fist into Vorian's stomach. Vorian doubled over, and Constantine grabbed him by the throat. "Yeah, watch this, old friend," Constantine said, and started to squeeze. Clara swung the poker with everything she had. It connected with Constantine's head with a sound like a bell ringing. He staggered, released Vorian, and turned to stare at her in surprise. "You hit me," he said. "I'll do it again." Clara raised the poker, hands shaking. Constantine started to laugh. "Oh, this is perfect. She's a fighter. Vorian, you chose well." He took a step toward her, and Vorian grabbed him from behind. They went down in a tangle, rolling across the floor. Clara heard bones crack, smelled blood. She gripped the poker and waited for an opening. Vorian got on top, drove his fist into Constantine's face once, twice. But Constantine bucked him off and came to his feet, still smiling through the blood. "This is fun," Constantine said, "but I'm getting bored. Time to finish this." He moved toward Clara, and Vorian shouted, "No!" Everything happened at once. Vorian threw himself between them. Constantine's hand shot forward, aiming for Clara's heart. And Clara swung the poker again, this time in a wide arc. The poker wasn't wood, it was iron. But Constantine had been focused on Clara, not on the weapon, and he turned directly into the blow. The poker drove through his chest and emerged from his back. Constantine stopped, looked down at the iron bar protruding from his body, then up at Clara. "Well," he said, "that's unfortunate." Then he burst into flames. Clara stumbled backward, dropping the poker. The fire consumed Constantine in seconds, burning too hot and too fast to be natural. Magic fire. Death fire. In moments, there was nothing left but ash. Vorian stood slowly, staring at the remains of his enemy. You killed him. Clara was shaking so hard she could barely stand. I didn't mean to, I just swung, and Vorian crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. You saved my life. Our lives. Is he really dead this time? Yes. Vorian's voice was rough. That's Deathfire. It's final. The curse would have burned out with him. Clara clung to him, breathing in his scent, feeling the solid reality of him. He was going to kill you. He was going to kill you. I would have gladly died to prevent that. That's not comforting. I'm sorry. But he didn't let go. Neither did she. They stood like that for a long time, surrounded by ash and broken glass and the dying fire on the curtains. Finally, Vorian stirred. We need to leave, he said. This place is compromised. If Constantine found it, others might too. Others? He didn't work alone. He had followers, vampires who enjoyed the chaos he caused. They'll scatter now that he's dead, but we should be cautious. Vorian pulled back to look at her. Are you hurt? No. Terrified, but not hurt. Clara glanced at his chest. You're bleeding. It's already healing. He touched the wound, and Clara saw that it was knitting itself together. Vampire metabolism. I'll be fine in an hour. Clara nodded numbly. Where do we go? Back to the city, to my home. It's the most heavily warded place I have. Vorian cupped her face in his hands. And then we talk. Like you wanted. About everything. Okay. Clara's voice came out small. Okay. They gathered their things and left the cottage as dawn was approaching. Vorian drove fast, racing the sun, and they made it to the city just as the sky was turning gray. His home was a penthouse in an old building downtown, all dark wood and heavy curtains and views of the city that would be spectacular if the windows weren't covered. Vorian led her inside and immediately secured every lock, every ward. You'll be safe here, he said. The building itself is owned by vampires. We take care of our own. Clara set down her bag and looked around. It was beautiful, in a Gothic sort of way. Old paintings on the walls, furniture that looked antique, books everywhere. This is where you live? She asked. When I'm not traveling. I have several homes, but this is the one I prefer. Vorian moved to close the curtains tighter. The sun was rising. Make yourself comfortable. I need to sleep for a few hours, but we'll talk tonight. I promise. Clara nodded. She watched him disappear down a hallway, heard a heavy door close. Then she was alone. She explored the penthouse slowly. It was huge, room after room filled with things Vorian had collected over 7 centuries. She found a library that made her heart ache with longing, shelves of books in a dozen languages, a music room with instruments she didn't recognize, a kitchen that looked unused, and in one room, hanging on the wall, a painting of her. Clara stopped, staring. It was her as she'd looked 5 years ago, sitting in the coffee shop where they used to meet, reading a book. The artist had captured her expression perfectly, that look of concentration and slight smile she got when she was absorbed in a story. Vorian had commissioned this, had kept it all these years. She touched the frame gently, and her throat went tight. He'd never stopped caring. Even when he'd left, even when he'd stayed away, he'd kept her close in the only way he could. Clara went to the bedroom Vorian had indicated was hers and lay down, but she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the fight, the sight of Constantine burning, the feel of Vorian's arms around her. She'd killed someone, something, a vampire who'd been cursed and twisted and turned into a monster, but still, she'd ended a life. Clara pressed her hands to her face and tried not to cry. She must have fallen asleep eventually, because she woke to the sound of Vorian knocking softly on her door. Clara, are you awake? Yes, come in. He opened the door carefully. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark trousers and a deep blue shirt that made his eyes look almost silver. The wound on his chest was gone. How are you feeling? He asked. Strange, shaky. I keep thinking about Constantine burning. Clara sat up. Is that normal? Yes. Taking a life, even in self-defense, even a life like his, is traumatic. You're allowed to feel whatever you're feeling. Vorian sat on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You were going to die. Perhaps, but I've lived 700 years. You've barely begun your life. If one of us had to die, I would have preferred it be me. Stop that. Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. Stop acting like your life doesn't matter. You matter, Vorian, to your people, to the world, to me. He went very still. Clara. I saw the painting in the other room of me. Vorian closed his eyes. I should have put that away before you arrived. Why did you keep it? Because I'm 700 years old and I've loved exactly twice in all that time, and one of those loves I had to walk away from to keep her alive. He opened his eyes, and the pain in them was staggering. I kept the painting because it was all I had left of you. Clara's breath caught. Twice? Who was the first? A human woman named Eleanor in the 1400s. She died of plague. I wasn't able to save her. Vorian's voice was soft. I mourned her for decades, and then I met you, and I thought perhaps I could have a second chance at happiness, but Constantine made sure I couldn't. And now he's dead. Yes. Thanks to you. Vorian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. You saved both of us, Clara. I've been trying to kill Constantine for 200 years, and you did it in one swing. It was iron. I got lucky. It was bravery. Don't diminish what you did. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. You're extraordinary. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. I missed you. Even when I hated you, I missed you so much. I missed you too. Every moment of every day. Vorian brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. And now I'm going to ask you the question I should have asked 5 years ago, before I made decisions for both of us. Clara's heart was pounding. Okay. Do you want a future with me? Knowing what I am, what my life entails, the dangers that come with being close to me, knowing that I'm far from perfect, and I've made terrible mistakes. His silver eyes met hers. I'm offering you a choice, Clara. Stay with me, for as long as you want. As a human or as a vampire, whichever you prefer, or leave and I'll make sure you're protected and safe, and I'll honor your decision. Clara looked at him, this ancient, powerful creature who'd broken her heart and was now offering it back to her, repaired and trembling in his hands. I need to know something first, she said. Anything. If something threatens me again, will you run? Will you push me away to protect me? Vorian was quiet for a long moment. That's what terrifies me most. My instinct is still to hide you away, to keep you separate from the dangerous parts of my world. But I've learned that doesn't work. It just hurts us both. He squeezed her hand. So no, I won't run. If something threatens you, we'll face it together. I'll trust you to be strong enough to stand beside me. You promise? I swear it. On my life, on my throne, on everything I am. I will never leave you again unless you ask me to. Clara felt the last of her walls crumble. Then yes, I want a future with you. Vorian's expression transformed. Hope, joy, relief, all tangled together. Yes? Yes? I love you, Vorian. I've loved you since the day you walked into that coffee shop, and we started arguing about whether Dracula was an accurate portrayal of vampires. It's extremely inaccurate, he said, and then he was kissing her. It was like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she'd lost and forgotten. Clara kissed him back with 5 years of longing and anger and stubborn hope, and Vorian held her like she was precious, like she was everything. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. I love you too, Vorian said, in case that wasn't clear. Clara laughed, and it came out watery. It was reasonably clear. Good. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. So what now? Do you want time to think about the turning, or? I want to think about it, Clara said, but not for long. I'm 29, Vorian. I'm not getting younger. You're perfect exactly as you are. Sweet talker. She curled into his chest, feeling his arms come around her. But I think I want it, eventually, to have forever with you. You can have as much or as little as you want, forever, a decade, just this moment. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, letting the reality of it settle. Constantine was dead. The threat was gone. They had time. Finally, Clara stirred. What happens now? With your court, your responsibilities? I'll need to return to court eventually. Announce Constantine's death, settle affairs, but that can wait a few weeks. Vorian brushed her hair back from her face. I thought we might take a trip first. Somewhere you've always wanted to go. Paris, Vienna, Tokyo, your choice. I've always wanted to see Romania, where Constantine was from. Vorian raised an eyebrow. That's a strange choice given the circumstances. I want to see where your story with him began. I want to understand. Clara looked up at him. And I want to lay him to rest properly if we can. He was a victim first, before he became a monster. That should be remembered. Vorian's expression softened. You're far kinder than I deserve. Probably, but you're stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. He kissed her again, soft and sweet. Romania it is. We'll leave tomorrow night. They spent the day planning, talking, making up for 5 years of lost time. Vorian told her about his court, the other vampires she'd meet, the politics she'd need to navigate. Clara told him about her job, her authors, the life she'd built without him. You'll have to quit, Vorian said, or work remotely. The court is based in Prague, and I can't leave for extended periods. I can work remotely. Most of my job is phone calls and emails anyway. Clara paused. Will they accept me? Your court? They'll have to. I'm their king. But his voice was gentle. And once they meet you, they'll understand why I love you. You're brilliant and brave, and you killed Constantine when I couldn't. They'll respect that. Clara wasn't so sure, but she decided to trust him. That night, they flew to Romania on a private jet Vorian kept for travel. Clara slept most of the way, exhausted from the last week's stress. She woke to Vorian shaking her gently. We're here, he said. Outside the plane window, she could see mountains and forest, a landscape that looked ancient and wild. They drove to a small village at the base of the mountains, and Vorian led her to a cemetery on the edge of town. This is where Constantine's family was buried, he said, before the turning. His sister is here. They found the grave, worn and old but still readable. Elena Ravenswood, beloved daughter and sister, died 1523. Clara knelt and placed a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked on the way. I'm sorry for what happened to you, both of you. Vorian knelt beside her. I should have protected them. I should have seen what Dragan was planning. You can't save everyone. I know, but I should have saved them. He touched the headstone gently. I'm sorry, old friend. I hope you found peace. They stayed for a while, paying their respects. Then they walked back to the village as the sun started to rise, and Vorian showed her the ruins of Constantine's castle. It was mostly fallen stone now, overtaken by forest, but Clara could imagine what it had been, grand, proud, a place of power. He loved this place, Vorian said. Before everything went wrong, he was planning to modernize it, make it a center of learning. He wanted to build libraries, schools. He could have been great. He was great until he was destroyed. Vorian put his arm around her. That's what Dragan took from him. The chance to be who he was meant to be. Clara leaned into him. Do you think the curse is really gone? Yes, I can feel it. The weight I've carried for 2 centuries is gone. Constantine is at peace, and so am I. They returned to the village as the sun climbed higher. Vorian rented them a room in a small inn, shuttered against the daylight, and they slept tangled together. Clara woke in the afternoon to find Vorian watching her. That's creepy, she said, but she was smiling. You're beautiful when you sleep. I'm 700 years old. I'm allowed to be occasionally creepy. Occasionally. Frequently. He kissed her nose. Are you ready to continue our trip? Where are we going? Prague, to my court. I need to introduce you properly. Clara felt nerves flutter in her stomach. And if they don't like me, then they can learn to deal with it. You're mine, and I'm not giving you up for anyone. His voice was firm. But they will like you. How could they not? They traveled to Prague that night, and Clara got her first glimpse of Vorian's true world. The court was housed in a castle beneath the city, accessible through a series of tunnels and wards. It was breathtaking. Gothic architecture, soaring ceilings, tapestries that looked centuries old, and vampires, dozens of them, all pale and beautiful and dangerous. Vorian led her through the halls with his hand on her back, projecting calm confidence. Vampires stopped to stare, to whisper. Clara held her head high and tried not to look terrified. They reached a throne room, and Vorian ascended the dais to sit on a chair that was definitely a throne. Clara stood beside him, and he took her hand. "My people," Vorian said, his voice carrying through the hall. "I present to you Clara Hastings. She is my chosen companion, and she has done what I could not. She has killed Constantine and ended his reign of terror." Silence. Then one vampire stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and eyes like emeralds. "Is this true?" she asked. "It is," Vorian said. "Constantine found us in hiding, and Clara struck him down with iron. He burned to death fire." The silver-haired vampire turned to Clara. "You killed the cursed one?" "I did, in self-defense, but yes." The vampire studied her for a long moment, then she knelt. "Then you have my loyalty, human, and my gratitude. Constantine killed my brother a century ago." One by one, the other vampires knelt. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Vorian squeezed her hand. "Rise, all of you. We have much to discuss. But first, we celebrate. The curse is broken, and we are free." The court erupted in cheers. That night there was a feast. Vampires drank from crystal goblets filled with blood, and Clara ate human food that had been specially prepared for her. Vorian stayed by her side the entire time, introducing her to his people, laughing at their stories. The silver-haired vampire, whose name was Isolde, sat next to Clara at one point. "You're brave," Isolde said. "Most humans would run screaming from this world." "I've had practice being brave around vampires," Clara said. "Vorian is lucky to have found you. He's been alone too long." "He's had 700 years. I think he was waiting for the right person." Isolde smiled. "I think you're right." The celebration lasted until dawn. When the last of the court had retired, Vorian led Clara to his private chambers. They were luxurious, all dark wood and velvet, and a bed that looked big enough for 5 people. "This is your room?" Clara asked. "Our room, if you want it to be." Vorian wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Stay with me, Clara. Not just tonight. Always." Clara leaned back against him. "I'm here, aren't I?" "You are. But I want to hear you say it. That you're choosing this. Choosing me." She turned in his arms to face him. "I choose you, Vorian Gravesend. For however long we have. Forever, if you'll have me." "Forever sounds perfect." He kissed her deep and slow. "When do you want to turn?" Clara had been thinking about it. "Soon, maybe a few months. I want to tie up some loose ends in my human life first, say goodbye properly." "Take all the time you need. I've waited 700 years. I can wait a little longer." They made love that night, slow and reverent, like they were memorizing each other. Clara fell asleep in Vorian's arms, feeling safe and loved and home. The next few months passed in a blur. Clara returned to her old life long enough to resign from her job, sell her apartment, and say goodbye to the people who mattered. It was bittersweet, but she was ready. She moved to Prague permanently, into the castle with Vorian. She learned the politics of the vampire court, made friends among the immortals, and slowly found her place in this strange new world. And through it all, Vorian was beside her, patient, loving, teaching her what she needed to know. They traveled together, exploring Europe. They spent hours in his library, reading together. They talked about everything and nothing. Clara had never been happier. 6 months after Constantine's death, she decided she was ready. "Turn me," she told Vorian one night. They were in their chambers, curled up together. Vorian pulled back to look at her. "Are you sure?" "Completely. I want forever with you. I want to see the world change, to have centuries together. I'm ready. It will hurt. The transformation is agonizing." "I know. I'm not afraid." Vorian cupped her face in his hands. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." "Then make me like you. Make me yours in every way." He kissed her, soft and deep. Then he pulled back and bared his fangs. "I love you, Clara Hastings." "I love you too." The bite was sharp, painful, but then his venom hit her bloodstream, and the pain transformed into something else. Heat, pleasure, a sense of her body remaking itself. Clara clung to Vorian as the transformation took her, trusting him to guide her through. When she woke 3 days later, the world had changed. Colors were sharper, sounds clearer. She could hear Vorian's heartbeat from across the room, slow and steady. She sat up, and he was there immediately. "How do you feel?" he asked. Clara looked down at her hands. They were pale now, almost white. She touched her face, felt the sharpness of her new fangs. Different, stronger. She looked up at him. Is it always like this? The intensity fades over time, but yes, the world is different when you're immortal. Vorian took her hand. Welcome to eternity, my love. Clara launched herself at him, kissing him fiercely. He caught her, laughing, and they tumbled onto the bed. Careful, he said. You're much stronger now. You could hurt me. As if I'd ever hurt you. I know. But the control takes practice. Clara settled against him, feeling the rightness of it. They had forever now, centuries to explore, to love, to build a life together. What do we do now? She asked. Now? We live, we travel, we protect our people, we find joy where we can. Vorian kissed her forehead. Together. Together, Clara agreed. 1 year after Constantine's death, Clara and Vorian returned to the city where they'd first met. They visited Sarah's grave, bringing flowers and stories of their year. I wish you could have met her as she is now, Vorian said, looking at the headstone. She would have loved vampire Clara, all that courage she always had, now backed by immortal strength. Clara touched the stone gently. I like to think she'd be happy for us, that she'd understand. She would. Sarah always wanted you to be happy. They stood in silence for a while, paying their respects. Then Clara said, I want to do something, in her memory. What did you have in mind? A foundation, to help humans who've been hurt by supernatural creatures, give them resources, protection, a place to heal. Clara looked at Vorian. Sarah died because of the supernatural world. I can't change that, but I can help others survive it. Vorian's eyes shone with pride. That's perfect. We'll establish it in her name, the Sarah Chen Foundation. You don't mind? Mind? Clara, I'm in awe of you. This is exactly the kind of thing the vampire world needs. Accountability, compassion. He pulled her close. Let's build it together. They spent the next year establishing the foundation. Clara threw herself into the work, using her new immortality and resources to create something meaningful. Vorian supported her every step, using his influence to make sure the foundation had teeth. It became Clara's purpose, the thing that made her immortality feel worthwhile. She helped humans transition after supernatural trauma, protected them from predatory creatures, and gave them the choice she'd been given: knowledge, power, the ability to decide their own fate. And through it all, Vorian was beside her, her partner, her love, her equal. 3 years after the turning, they were in their library when Vorian set down his book and looked at her. I want to ask you something, he said. Clara marked her page. Okay. We've never formally married. In vampire culture, we're already bonded, but I thought perhaps you'd want a human ceremony as well, to mark what we are to each other. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. Are you proposing? I suppose I am. Vorian got down on one knee, and even though he was already hers in every way that mattered, Clara's breath caught. Clara Hastings, will you marry me? In the eyes of both our worlds, for all the centuries to come? Yes, Clara said, pulling him up to kiss him. Yes, absolutely yes. They married in the spring, 5 years after they'd reunited at Sarah's funeral. It was a small ceremony in a garden they'd created in Sarah's memory, filled with the flowers she'd loved. Isolde officiated, and the few humans Clara still counted as friends attended alongside the vampire court. When Vorian kissed his bride, the vampires cheered, and Clara felt complete. They honeymooned in Japan, somewhere neither of them had been in decades. They explored temples and cities, tasted new things, made love under the cherry blossoms. I never thought I'd have this, Vorian said one night. They were on a balcony overlooking Kyoto, the city lights spread out below. After Constantine, after losing so many people, I thought I was meant to be alone. You're not alone anymore. Clara took his hand. You have me, and I have you, for as long as forever lasts. Forever sounds like a good start. Vorian pulled her close, and they watched the sun rise together for the first time, shielded by the hotel's UV-protected glass. 10 years after Constantine's death, Clara stood in the throne room of the Prague court and announced that she was pregnant. It was nearly impossible for vampires to conceive, but Clara had been human once, turned rather than born, and her body had retained some of its human capability. The court erupted in shock and joy. Vorian couldn't stop smiling for days. A child, he kept saying. We're going to have a child. Are you happy? Clara asked. I'm terrified and ecstatic in equal measure. I haven't raised a child in 700 years. Then it's a good thing we have forever to figure it out. Their daughter was born on a winter night, healthy and squalling and perfect. She had Clara's dark hair and Vorian's silver eyes, and they named her Seraphina. Holding her for the first time, Clara felt something shift in her heart. This was what forever was for. Not just the two of them, but this, family, legacy, love that extended beyond themselves. "Hello, little one," Vorian whispered, touching Seraphina's tiny hand. "Welcome to the world." Seraphina grew quickly, a mix of human and vampire traits that fascinated the court physicians. She was stronger than a human child, but not fully vampire, and they had to carefully navigate her unique needs. But Clara and Vorian handled it together, the way they handled everything, with patience, love, and the certainty that they could face anything as long as they were together. When Seraphina was 3, Clara found Vorian in the library, reading to their daughter from a book of fairy tales. "And they lived happily ever after," Vorian finished. "Like us?" Seraphina asked. "Exactly like us, little love." Clara leaned against the doorframe, watching them. Her husband and her daughter, her family. The life she'd built from grief and loss and stubborn hope. Vorian looked up and caught her watching. He smiled, that same soft smile he'd given her in the coffee shop over a decade ago. "Come here," he said, reaching out a hand. Clara crossed the room and settled beside them, Seraphina climbing into her lap. Vorian put his arm around both of them, and for a moment, everything was perfect. "Tell us another story, Papa," Seraphina demanded. "Which one?" "The one about you and Mama, how you met again at the funeral." Vorian glanced at Clara and she nodded. It was a good story. Sad at the beginning, but with a happy ending. "All right," Vorian said. "Once upon a time there was a vampire king who made a terrible mistake. He left the woman he loved because he thought it would keep her safe. But he was wrong, and he spent 5 long years missing her and wishing he'd made a different choice." "And then?" Seraphina asked, even though she'd heard this story a dozen times. "And then a mutual friend died, and they met again at her funeral. The vampire king asked the woman to leave with him to give him a second chance, and the woman, who was brave and brilliant and far kinder than he deserved, said yes. And then they fell in love again," Seraphina said. "They did. And they fought a monster together, and they won. And they built a life that was better than either of them had imagined." Vorian kissed Clara's temple. "And they lived happily ever after." "With me," Seraphina added. "With you, little love. You're the best part of the story." Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of Seraphina in her lap, Vorian's arm around her shoulders, the quiet peace of the library. This was what she'd fought for, what she'd chosen when she'd said yes at the funeral, when she'd faced Constantine, when she'd asked to be turned. This moment, this family, this love. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," Vorian replied. "Both of you, forever." And forever stretched out ahead of them, bright and endless and full of possibility. 20 years after the funeral, Clara and Vorian stood in Sarah's memorial garden, now lush and thriving. They came here every year on the anniversary of her death to remember and to celebrate. Seraphina was with them, now a young woman of 17, graceful and strong and everything they'd hoped she'd be. "Do you think Aunt Sarah would have liked me?" Seraphina asked, touching one of the roses. "She would have adored you," Clara said. "She always wanted me to have a family. She'd be thrilled that I have both of you." "Tell me about her," Seraphina said. So Clara told the stories, about late nights and bad decisions, about laughter and tears and friendship that had lasted through everything, about the woman who died so that Clara could find her way back to Vorian. "She sounds wonderful," Seraphina said. She was. And she'd be so proud of what we've built in her name. Clara looked at the foundation building visible beyond the garden, its lights glowing in the dusk. "She's part of all of this." Vorian put his arm around Clara's waist. "She brought us back together. I'll always be grateful to her for that." They stood together as the sun set, a family built from loss and love, and Clara thought about how far they'd come, from that rainy funeral to this moment, from heartbreak to happiness. "Ready to go home?" Vorian asked. Clara looked at her husband and daughter, her heart full. "Yes, let's go home." They walked out of the garden together, leaving flowers behind for a friend who'd never be forgotten, and headed toward a future that was theirs to shape. Together. Always together. For all the forevers to come.